Welcome everyone, you seekers of understanding, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really zeroing in, taking a close look, question by question, at one specific session, session 62 of the Law of One.
All right, this is the transcript from July 13th, 1981, the channeling with Ra.
Exactly. And our mission really is to unpack it, to go through each question and answer in detail, looking for those insights, the beautiful and positive stuff embedded in there.
And it kicks off with something a bit strange, doesn't it?
It really does. Right at the start, there's this request to rewalk the protective circle and expel breath.
Yeah, which immediately makes you wonder, okay, what happened? Why was that necessary?
Let's dive right in there.
So, session 62 opens, and Ra immediately asks for these actions, and it prompts the first question, 62.1.
Okay, so the questioner asks point blank, what's with the rewalking and the breath?
And Ra doesn't hold back. They reveal there was a specific psychic attack right at the session's beginning.
Whoa. Okay. How did that happen?
Ra explains there was a slight irregularity when they first walked the circle. Later, it's mentioned it was a missed word,
Just one word.
apparently. But that slight imperfection created an opening
An opening for what?
for an entity. Ra says it came into this opening and began to affect the instrument, Carla, who was already in trance.
And this was a negative effect.
Oh, yes. Ra says it was negatively impacting her physical body.
So the fix was?
Rewalking the circle carefully, and then using the breath of righteousness, as Ra calls it, to expel the thought form, the entity, then walking the circle again to seal it properly.
The breath of righteousness.
Mhm.
Interesting phrasing. So question 62.2 then asks, naturally, who or what was this thought form? What was its alignment?
And Ra gives a very specific answer of Orion affiliation.
Orion. Okay, so for listeners, in the Law of One context, Orion generally refers to service to self entities or groups.
Exactly. So that immediately tells you the intent behind the attack wasn't positive. It fits the pattern of disruption from negatively oriented sources.
So the next question, 62.3, is pretty crucial. Did the attack actually succeed in causing more distortion to the instrument's body?
And Ra's answer is a stark, this is correct.
Oof. So even though they caught it and corrected it, some effect got through.
It seems so, which highlights just how sensitive this process is and how quickly things can happen on an energetic level.
So 62.4 digs into that.
Yeah.
What was the distortion? What was the attack actually trying to do?
Ray explains the thought form's aim was pretty severe, to end the instrument's incarnation, to, cause her death
Seriously, by targeting what?
by targeting renal distortions issues with her kidneys. And here's the really interesting part.
Yeah.
Raz says these kidney issues had actually been corrected before in what they call time-space, like on a higher dimensional level.
But they were still vulnerable. How?
Because, according to Ra, the ongoing energy shifts, the unmolding of space-time distortions in our reality made those healed areas temporarily vulnerable again, like an old wound flaring up.
Okay. So it's like the healing was real, but the current energetic environment created a temporary weak spot.
That's a good way to put it. And the Orion entity knew how to target that specific vulnerability.
Okay, so question 62.5 asks about the actual damage done. What was the immediate detrimental effect?
Ra says there will be some discomfort for Carla, but crucially, they also mention her own openness and good tuning.
Her own spiritual state helped.
Immensely, it seems. Ra explicitly states that without the group's intervention and Ra's instructions, her physical body would have become unviable pretty quickly.
Wow, that's sobering. It really underscores how vital those protective measures and the group's harmony were.
Absolutely, and the instrument's own alignment.
So naturally, question 62.6 follows up. Are there going to be any lasting effects from this?
Ra is cautiously optimistic here. They say it's difficult to say for sure, but they are of the opinion that no lasting harm or distortion will occur.
Okay, that's good news. Why optimism?
Two things mainly. First, the strength of the original healer who worked on the kidney issues. Second, the effectiveness of the energetic bonds that were remolding those distortions.
Right.
And then Ra gives this really fascinating comparison. They frame it as a conflict between two forms of the leavings, like energetic residues.
Leavings.
Yeah. The healer's distortions, which were filled with love, versus the Orion entity's distortions, described as pure in separation.
So love energy versus separation energy, essentially.
Pretty much. And Ra suggests the love-based energy is stronger, implying that while there might be some temporary discomfort, the underlying healing should hold. They advise keeping an eye on it, though.
That makes sense. It's a powerful idea that the quality of the energy matters most in the end. Okay, so question 62.7 goes back to the beginning. That opening in the circle, did the Orion entity cause it? Or was it just bad luck?
Ra clarifies this. The entity was basically scouting, looking for a target of opportunity.
Ah, so opportunistic.
Exactly. The missed word during the circle walking was just a chance occurrence, not something the entity engineered.
But they were ready to take advantage of it.
Right. And Ra uses this to stress the need for constant awareness, knowing they might be observed, and the absolute importance of immediately repeating the circle ritual if anything feels off.
And that's where the advice about expelling breath comes in again. Always to the left.
Yes, that specific instruction is reinforced here, a practical tip for future protection.
Okay, so 62.8 just asks for a bit more on expelling breath generally.
And Ra simply repeats the advice. If the circle feels imperfect, repeat the breath expulsion, just like they did at the start of this session. It's about clearing and reinforcing the space.
Then 62.9 drills down. Why to the left? What does that mean physically?
Ra describes the action, blowing the breath above the instrument's head, moving from her right side across to her left side.
Very specific directional flow. Suggests a precise energetic technique.
It does. These things often have subtle energetic reasons behind them in these kinds of practices.
Okay, shifting focus back to Carla's well-being in 62 point bound. After the trance, given the attack, what could they do to help her recover?
Ra's answer is a bit surprising at first. They say, there is little to be done.
Really? Nothing.
Well, not quite nothing. What Ra means is the main energetic event has passed. The advice is practical. Watch her for any ongoing physical problems, any persistent distortions.
And if there are problems?
Then contact specific healers within their network. But importantly, Ra also says to counsel Carla to keep going with her work, to not let this deter her. Resilience is key.
Okay, so who are these healers? Question 62.11 asks for names and how to reach them.
Ra names 4 people. Dawn and Jim first for initial issues using healing practices they were developing.
Right.
Then a man named Stuart if problems persisted. And finally, someone named Douglas if things still weren't right after about 2 weeks, a fortnight.
It shows they had a kind of tiered support system in place.
Definitely. A network for physical and likely energetic support built within their community.
And 62.1, just a quick check. The questioner didn't know Stuart and Douglas, but asks if Carla did. Ra confirms this is correct. So she had those connections.
Right, the network was established.
Then at 62.33, the questioner asks, is that basically all the help available?
Ra confirms, yes, that's the direct aid, but then adds something really important.
What's that?
That the group's own habitual harmonies and loving social intercourse, basically, their positive loving interactions with each other, create a powerful, favorable environment for the work itself.
Ah, so the group's own energy is a form of support and protection.
A very significant one, according to Ra. It bolsters everything they do.
That makes sense. So moving on to 62.13, the question shifts. Why this group? How high a priority is disrupting this specific group for the Orion entities?
Ra is very clear. This group, and really any genuinely positive channel or their supporters, is a greatly high priority target for the Orion group.
Why target them so intensely?
Ra points to the instrument's physical body. Since Carla is the direct channel, her physical vulnerabilities are seen as the easiest way to try and dissolve the whole mind-body-spirit complex doing the work.
Because maybe her mind and spirit were too strong.
That's exactly what Ra implies. They say this group has learned to be relatively free of serious chinks vulnerabilities in their mental and spiritual vibration patterns, unlike perhaps other channels who might have more obvious ego hooks or issues.
So the physical route was the path of least resistance for the attack.
It seems so. A kind of backhanded compliment to the group's spiritual and mental coherence, in a way.
Interesting point. Okay, 62.15. Here, the questioner isn't really asking, but stating something about the Orion group's goal. Harvesting service to self entities to build their own potential using something called the law of squares or doubling.
And Ra simply confirms this is correct. It gives us a peek into the mechanics, the motivation behind the negative path's expansion strategy.
This law of squares or doubling sounds like exponential growth based on how many they can, well, harvest.
That seems to be the implication, yes. More recruits equals disproportionately more power, according to their principles.
Then 62.16 asks if other service-to-self groups, like maybe from the Southern Cross area, work with Orion on this harvest.
Ra says the Southern Cross group are actually members of the Orion group.
Oh, so it's a larger collective.
Yes, though Ra cautions that naming by galaxy isn't totally accurate. But the main point is that the social memory complexes from the Orion constellation are dominant. They basically rule the other negative groups within this larger structure.
And Ra mentions a pecking order.
Right. And power against power and separation. It highlights that even within this negative alliance, it's not about unity, but about hierarchy, dominance, and competition. It's inherent in the service to self path.
So following that logic, question 62.17 asks, does a bigger negative harvest mean the whole Orion complex gets stronger, but especially those at the top? Do they get the biggest polarity boost?
And again, a clear confirmation from Ra. This is correct. To the stronger go, the greater shares of polarity.
It really paints a picture of that hierarchy. Power flows upwards.
Exactly. It's all about consolidating power and control for those already in dominant positions.
Now, 62.18 asks for clarification on the density level. Are we talking about fourth density Orion beings here?
Ra says it's primarily fourth density, but also a few fifth density member involved in the Orion group's activities.
Okay, so multiple levels are involved.
Which adds layers to how they operate and influence things.
And question 62.19 confirms the logical next step. Is the very top of that pecking order fifth density?
This is correct, Ross affirms.
So this leads to a really big question in 62.20. What's the goal, the philosophy of these fifth density Orion leaders? What drives them?
This is a fascinating explanation from Ra. They say this kind of thinking isn't totally alien to us as we see negative orientations on Earth too.
Right.
Early fifth density negative beings aiming for group cohesion might see manipulating others but doing it with exquisite propriety, sort of elegantly, as the path to wisdom. Their goal is to put in order creation as they see fit.
Order through control, essentially.
Yes. They use their greater wisdom to lead the fourth density members who are still exploring separation. When it comes to third density harvest, like here on Earth, they're less about crude attacks themselves. They understand the call mechanism better. They tend to send the less wise fourth density entities to do the groundwork, but the successes still benefit the fifth density leaders.
Delegating the dirty work, basically.
Pretty much. And crucially, these fifth density leaders recognize the challenge from positive forces, the light. So they direct the fourth density entities to look for targets of opportunity, like this very channeling session.
Ah, so the strategy comes from the top.
And if the usual fourth density temptations, ego, power, etc., don't work on a target,
Like they didn't seem to work well on this group.
then the fifth density entity considers the next option, removal of light. Direct intervention to stop the positive influence.
Chilling. Exquisite propriety. Masking a pretty ruthless agenda.
It's a very sophisticated form of negative strategy.
Okay, so 62.21 asks for a description. What did this specific fifth density attacker look like? How did it arrive? How does it... Wait.
Ra describes fifth density beings generally as very light beings. Their physical forms, if seen, would actually look beautiful by our standards.
Not monstrous.
Apparently not. But their main method isn't physical presence, it's thought projection. They've mastered that. So they're usually imperceptible to our normal senses.
How would you even know one was there then?
Ra gives a clue. They mentioned Carla recently feeling an extreme coldness, even though it was warm. That feeling, even if not consciously understood at the time, can indicate the presence of a negative, energy-draining entity.
Ah, that cold spot thing again.
Right. Ra notes Carla mentioned discomfort, but the group sustained her. And Ra reiterates that if not for that random slip-up with the circle word, the group's positive foundation, their love and light, likely would have prevented the attack from succeeding anyway.
That's reassuring. The group's baseline strength matters a lot, so 62.22 is just confirming it was a fifth density entity that attacked.
This is correct, says Ra.
Which leads to question 62.23. Why would a fifth density being bother? Why not just send a fourth density servant?
This is where Ra highlights the group's specific strengths again.
Okay.
Ra explains that most positive channels can be weakened or diverted by fourth density tricks, temptations about getting specific secret info, feeling special or important, building organizations, seeking power or money.
The ego traps.
Exactly. Those things pull focus away from just being a humble messenger of the one infinite creator's love and light. But
This group wasn't falling for those.
apparently not, or at least they were much more resilient. They had fewer chinks for those fourth density temptations. So a more direct, albeit subtle, energetic intervention from fifth density was deemed necessary by the Orion leadership.
So the fact that it was a fifth density attack actually says something positive about the group's spiritual integrity.
You could definitely interpret it that way. They required a higher level of opposition.
Okay, Back to that feeling of coldness during attacks in 62.24. The questioner asks, can anything be done about that?
Ra gives a very short, direct answer, yes.
Which, of course, leads immediately to 62.25. Okay, what can we do?
And Ra's response here is, well, it's a showstopper.
What do they say?
You could cease in your attempts to be channels for the love and the light of the one infinite creator.
Wow, that's blunt. Basically, the only way to avoid the risk is to stop doing the work.
Exactly. It's not practical advice, obviously, but it's a stark statement about the nature of the path they've chosen. Service to the light comes with inherent challenges and potential opposition. It highlights their commitment.
It really does. A powerful moment. So in 62.26, the questioner tries again, maybe looking for something less drastic. Is there anything else, anything practical they might have missed to help Carla before, during, after sessions?
Ra's answer here shifts completely. It's full of warmth and reassurance. They say the group's love and devotion misses nothing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it? Ra tells them to be at peace, to accept that this work has a toll, a cost, that Carla willingly embraces as part of her service.
So acceptance and peace are key.
Yes, and crucially, rest in that peace and love after a session. Let go of worry, because ultimately the great healer of distortions is love.
Love is the answer, essentially.
It's a core message. Their loving presence and harmony is the best support they can offer.
Okay. The conversation takes a turn now towards more metaphysical theory in 62.27. The questioner asks about density vibrations, confirming, like, first density is red, second is orange, and so on. And does this apply to Earth's core and the beings here?
And Ra confirms simply this is precisely correct. It validates that basic color vibration correspondence for the densities as they manifest on Earth.
A foundational concept confirmed. Then 62.28 follows up on the shift to fourth density. Does the incoming fourth density energy mean Earth itself can now support a fourth density core vibration? Or does the core stay first density, even with other densities present?
This is a big question about the planetary transition, but Ra signals they're nearing the end, saying this will be the last full query because Carla is tiring.
Right, managing the instrument's energy.
Always a primary concern.
So how does Ra answer that final full question in 62.29? It's a profound one.
It really is. Ra says, you must see the Earth as being 7 Earths.
7 Earths. Coexistent.
Exactly. Ra explains there's a red, orange, yellow, and soon-to-be-completed green vibratory location, or sphere, for fourth density beings, and they will call that green sphere Earth.
So multiple vibrational realities in the same space.
Yes. And Ra adds that during the fourth density experience, especially early on, the third density planet isn't really suitable for them. It's partly because early fourth density beings can't easily maintain the illusion or separation needed, so third density instruments can't detect them.
Ah, an energetic compatibility issue.
Seems like it. Ra also clarifies that in fourth density, the planet's red, orange, and green energy centers, or nexi, will be active, while yellow, blue, and indigo are present, but more in potential, waiting to be activated later.
That's a huge concept. Earth is a multi-density reality.
Absolutely mind-bending, really. It reframes everything about planetary evolution. Ra then asks if there are any brief final queries.
And the final question, 62.30, is just checking in one last time. Anything more for Carla's comfort or to improve the contact?
Ra offers gentle reassurance. All is well. You have been most conscientious, basically saying, you're doing everything right, don't worry.
And then the closing words.
A beautiful blessing. Ra leaves them in the glory of the love and light of the one infinite creator, urging them to go forth rejoicing in its power and peace. And the final word, Adonai.
Adonai.
Mhm.
Wow. What an incredibly packed session, especially starting with that psychic attack.
Absolutely. From immediate danger to profound metaphysical insights about the structure of reality and the nature of polarity.
We really covered a lot. The reality of psychic influence, the motivations and hierarchy of the Orion group, the density structure, and always coming back to the power of love and protection.
Despite the drama at the start, the core messages are deeply insightful and ultimately positive, I think.
I agree. This session, session 62, feels particularly relevant for anyone trying to understand the unseen forces at play and the importance of maintaining a positive focus.
The level of detail Ra provides is just extraordinary.
So for all of you listening, our fellow seekers, as you reflect on this journey through session 62, maybe consider this. Given this picture of a multi-layered reality, these coexisting densities and unseen influences,
Yeah.
how might that knowledge subtly shift how you view your own day-to-day life, your interactions?
Yeah. What does it really mean to consciously choose love and light when the energetic landscape is potentially this complex.
It's definitely something to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
May your own explorations continue to bring understanding and light.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Until next time, walk in love and light.
Mhm.
Namaste. I am you, and you are me.